One of the reasons I've always loved stories is because they're not just entertainment. They're life tools. Stories are how we learn, how we reflect, how we process. I don't mean in the moral of the story kind of way. I mean they're actual systems, frameworks, mental models for how to think, feel, and navigate this whole complicated mess we call life. They've played a huge role in my own life. Take Assassin's Creed, for example. That was the first time I encountered the phrase, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted." To me, it wasn't just an edgy philosophy for a video game. It was an invitation to question assumptions, to look behind the curtain. It was probably the first domino that pushed me towards existentialism, which, by the way, I am an existentialist. I've been building my own branch of it even called strategic existentialism, but that's a whole other conversation. Another example of a story that means a lot to me, which you might be surprised to hear me cite, Love is War, a rom-com of all things. But under all the absurdity and inner monologues and ridiculous scheming, hit me with something I didn't know I needed. Clarity on self-worth, on why we overcomplicate connection. This series made me better. Not just entertained. Better. And that's why I'm drawn to stories like that in the first place. If there's no emotional core, no psychological substance, I get bored. I don't care how flashy it is. If it doesn't speak to something, I check out. I need stories that either teach me, challenge me, or heal me. I want the spectacle too, don't get me wrong. But I hate feeling like I must choose one or the other when they work in tandem. Which brings me to the reason we're here. This year, one story made a bigger difference in my life than I expected. A sports enemy, of all things, Blue Lock. Now, before I dive into why Blue Lock mattered so much, we've got to rewind. Because what this show did for me, more than anything else, was give me the mental edge I needed to finally confront one of the biggest sources of stress I've dealt with in the past few years. It's thanks to it I figured out a path forward to my dream of becoming a professional author. On that note, let's start discussing something I absolutely hate: traditional publishing. On paper, it still sounds romantic. You land an agent. The agent chops your book. A publisher takes a risk. And boom, you're a real author, right? But in reality, that process, it's a broken bottleneck clogged with gatekeeping, nepotism, and a constant shifting list of what's marketable this week. You need to write a query letter that's somehow charming, professional, voicey, commercial, but also not too confident or too casual or too long or too vague or too anything. And then you wait, and wait, and wait. You're told no, not because your story isn't good, but because it doesn't fit a trend, a quota, or the personal taste of someone who read 2 paragraphs and skimmed the rest, if they even read it at all. And even if you do make it through that gauntlet, what you get isn't some golden ticket. You get a marketing budget smaller than a TikTok ad. You get your book thrown into a bloated seasonal catalog, buried under celebrity memoirs in the 10th sequel to something that sold well in 2016. And worst of all, you sign away your rights, wait 2 years for release, and make less money than your friend who sells scented candles on Etsy. So yeah, no thanks. That leaves the obvious alternative: independent publishing, which, let's be honest, is just code for Amazon. That's the ecosystem now. It's not really indie anymore. It's Bezos land. And unless you write fast, write to market, and accept that you're now playing algorithm chess, you're not surviving there either. You want to experiment with your structure? You want to write literary fiction with thriller pacing and philosophical weight? You want to be bold, genre-defying? You? Yeah, good luck getting your book to even show up in the search bar. Amazon rewards volume, speed, SEO, and sameness. It's a treadmill, not a path. Write fast, advertise harder, and pray that your cover looks close enough to a bestseller without crossing copyright. And if you don't do all that, you vanish. Doesn't matter how good the book is. Doesn't matter how much your heart you poured into it. The platform isn't built to reward craft. It's built to reward systems. And here's the kicker in all this. When you care about your work, when you're not trying to just pump out content, but actually build a legacy, the whole thing starts to feel rigged against you. Traditional publishing won't take the risk. Indie publishing demands you dilute the risk out of your own voice just to survive. Either way, you're forced to compromise. So yeah, that's where I've been mentally this year. Caught between a broken system and a soulless machine. And for someone who lives and breathes story, who believes in its power, who wants to dedicate his life to mastering the art, it wore me down. I began wondering if there was even room for a writer like me anymore. And then, Blue Lock got me to rethink things. It started with a whole lesson on turning 0 into 1. It was from that I realized I needed to start from scratch and understand the environment and the game from the ground up. Here's what I realized. I hadn't built my framework on what it means to be a professional author yet. So, what did I find when I tried that? Well, first, I asked myself, what does it mean to be a professional? And after quite a bit of thought, I realized this conclusion. Professionalism is the delivery of value in a way that sustains both the creator and the audience. That's it. A professional serves others in a way that's valuable enough to keep doing it. So for an author, that means serving your audience with story, ideas, insight, entertainment, whatever it is, at a level that makes it sustainable. Creatively, financially, emotionally. That became my new focus. Not chasing gatekeepers, not mimicking trends, not begging for permission. Just, how do I serve my audience in a way that lets me keep creating? And with that in mind, I went back to the second big question. The monster had been looming over me. Publishing. For years, I treated publishing like a destination. Like if I could just reach it, I'd be validated, accepted, official. But that mindset was a hand-me-down from an outdated system. So I threw all of it out. The industry expectations, the paths, the templates, the assumptions, gone. And when I stripped it all back, I realized something simple but profound. Publishing is just distribution. That's it. That's all it's ever been. It exists to solve the problem of how to get content from the creator to the audience at scale. That's it. Not art, not fairness, not creative fulfillment. It's a logistical pipeline. Traditional publishing, for all its prestige, is just a legacy machine that solves a specific problem in a specific era. How to control scarce resources like printing presses, bookstores, media coverage, and shelf space. But that era's over. They don't own the pipes anymore. They don't control the shelves. They don't even control the perception of legitimacy. And yet, they still demand that creators give over ownership, flexibility, and control? For what? Diminishing returns? The math doesn't add up. At best, they're middlemen with a broken map. At worst, they're attacks on your ambition. And so, as a professional, I ask the only question that actually matters now. How do I most efficiently scale my story to an audience while retaining control over the validation, packaging, and revenue stream? You're using the answer right now. I have all sorts of things I can say about YouTube, but it is the best location for discoverability on the web. I don't say that lightly. YouTube pulls in nearly 4 billion users a month. It's not just the second largest search engine, it's the world's default content engine. And now, thanks to shorts, which I hate but I will work with it, long form, live, and podcasting tools, it's become the multi-tool for creators. If you have something worth sharing and the chops to package it well, this is the place to be found. And sure, there's always a chance that someone won't stand out. A video might not do much at all. I doubt this video is even getting tons of views. But here, let me share something that should put things a little bit into perspective real quick. Let's say you post a video on YouTube and it gets 300 views. Not 300,000, not viral, not amazing, just 300. Most people will look at that and think, well, that flopped. And yeah, it feels like a failure on YouTube because you're used to seeing creators pull in numbers in the tens of thousands or millions. It's easy to get jaded fast. Trust me, I know. But let's run that number through the lens of the book world. The average self-publishing book sells somewhere around 250 copies total. The average traditional published book sells around 3 dozen copies, and that's with an entire team behind it, if you're lucky. Some professionally released print books sell under 300 across all formats, and that's after being stocked, marketed, blurbed, and prayed over. So if you drop a video that gets just 300 views, you've already matched or beaten what most books will do over their entire lifetimes. And it was done without printing, without shipping, without querying, without asking permission. That's what failing looks like on YouTube. That's the floor, not the ceiling. And that number helped reframe everything, especially when I combined it with the idea of 1,000 true fans. Heck, maybe not even 1,000, maybe fewer. Let me explain. The idea is simple. You don't need millions of followers. You don't need to go viral. You just need around 1,000 people who genuinely care about what you're doing. Not random subscribers, not empty likes. I'm talking about true fans. People who actually show up for your work, who buy what you make, who share it, who get it, who feel seen by it. Let's do some basic math. If 1,000 people spend $100 a year on your work, across books, merchandise, membership, whatever, that's 100,000 a year. That's not fame. That's freedom. That's sustainability. Even half that, 500 people at $10 a month, that's 60,000 a year. For most people, that's not just livable. That's liberating. On a platform like YouTube, combined with tools we have nowadays, that's actually possible. Of course, when people think about literature, they think about books and prose and so on. And that brings us to the fact that YouTube as a platform isn't designed for literature. Technically. Again, this brings us back to Blue Lock. And this is why Isagi is the protagonist I relate with more than any other. Isagi is always doing one thing. Reading the field. He's asking, what does the situation demand? And then adapting himself rapidly to meet that need. That's seriously how I operate more often than not. It's how I think. I'm not attached to one rigid vision on how things should be. I focus on the goal, the task at hand, and ask, what does success actually require here? Then I rewire myself to match it. So when I look at the literary landscape and all the chaos I'd be dealing with, I stopped asking how to force my writing into broken molds. Instead, I studied what's actually working, what the modern environment demands, what the YouTube field looks like. And that's when the ideas started flowing. Here, let me break it down into parts. First, I knew I needed to change the release model. Books take months, even years to produce. Then drop all at once into a crowded marketplace. That doesn't work here. YouTube rewards consistency, momentum, and iteration. So I went back into the history of publishing. What I found was fascinating. Back in the 19th century, Most major authors weren't writing full novels all at once. They released them serially, chapter by chapter, issue by issue. Charles Dickens, Alexander Dumas, names go on and on. Why? Because the infrastructure was different. People wanted bite-sized installments. They couldn't afford full bulks, and distribution favored periodicals. Sound familiar? Today's creator economy is the same deal. People want consistent value, easily consumable, and worth showing up for. So I decided to embrace serialization, not just for convenience, but because it works for the platform I'm on. 2. Prose built to be heard. Second, I realized something about my writing style. My prose isn't just meant to be read, it's meant to be heard. I care about cadence, rhythm, delivery, the kind of stuff that lands when spoken aloud. And let's be honest, no one's going to sit and read a full book on YouTube. That's not how people consume here. So I made a decision. Turn the story into an audiobook. The people experience the words, hear the flow, feel the intent. But I didn't stop there. 3. Leverage visuals, not fighting the platform. YouTube is a visual platform. That's its DNA. So just tossing up audio over a blank screen wasn't enough. I will do low content like that for, this channel, for example. It's very taxing if I don't, but not for something like that. So I asked the next Isagi-style question. What tools are available right now that could help me tell this story visually, without compromising what makes it mine? And that's when I stopped judging. Instead of gatekeeping myself with purist ideas of what's acceptable, I asked what's possible. The answer? AI plus visual novel aesthetics. It clicked. I could bring my story to life visually using modern tools, not replace the writing, but to highlight it. And that opened everything up. Now, quick aside, because so many love to bring this up to me like I never thought about it, I know AI visuals can be controversial. I have a lot of thoughts on that, which I'll get into in another video. But I'll say this. Technology isn't the enemy. Misuse is. When used intentionally, these tools become a canvas, not a shortcut. And I've seen creators already doing it well, like Seals Are Good with his hilarious parody, leaning into AI to create character comedy that works because the writing lands. Or Loresmith, who's out here crafting full-on anime-style fanfic retellings of games like Tekken, Metal Gear, Knights of the Old Republic, and doing it with artistry, pacing, and vision. They're not replacing anything. They're creating something new for people. They're providing quality experiences. That's what I want to do too. So, what's the full experience? Cinematic prose. I brought everything together. Serialized structure, audiobook narration, visual novel presentation, AI-generated backgrounds and character stills, background music and sound design. The result? Something new. Something built for modern attention. A frictionless, cinematic experience, grounded in prose. Something that keeps the beauty of writing, but makes it feel alive, intimate, shareable. If you're wondering why I don't call this a visual novels tend to be script-based. They're about dialogue and scenes. I wouldn't mind to highlight the prose, give people the feeling of reading without the mental drag. Something they could relax into, something they could feel. Thus, broadcast literature. If you want to see what I have going with that, it lives on its own channel. You'll get to see me apply all sorts of lessons I discuss here on that channel in a way that's easy on you. Of course, while I'm confident in this idea, I don't know how many it'll attract in the end. Still, it's something that gives me genuine hope. And that hope allows me to keep working on turning my dream into reality, despite the odds against me. So yeah, that's how Blue Lock saved my sanity.